Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Guy. This is Guy Talk Sports. Long time no see. I have been away on vacation. Went down to the Gulf with the family. That was a great time. Had a couple days of work when I got back. Man, we have a lot to talk about. Tennessee has played 2 football games since I released my last video. So in today's video, that's what we're going to do. We're going to review the NC State game. We're going to review the Kent State game. And then we're going to take a look ahead at the big matchup this Saturday. Tennessee takes on the Oklahoma Sooners. Very excited about this. If you want to jump ahead to any particular topic in this video, look down below in the description box. I will post the timestamps for you to jump ahead. Before we get into anything, though, if you don't mind, look below this screen. There's a subscribe button. Go ahead and smash that for me. Let's get into this. So let's dive in to the NC State game, right? So Tennessee absolutely handled NC State in front of a packed Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte back on the 7th of September. This was an ABC game. It was prime time, right? The whole nation got to see what Tennessee was about. It was kind of a coming out party for Tennessee. And I think it really kind of put the rest of the country on notice, like, oh, you know, this Tennessee team might be a little bit more than just an offense. So for that game, I picked Tennessee to win 45-24. Offensively, that's about what they produced. However, I, as well as the rest of the country, did not realize just how dominant this defense was going to be. Granted, NC State, turns out they're not a really good team. They might not even be a good team at this point. They still have a lot to prove. But this defense was locked down. They only allowed 3 points. They got the pick 6. And, you know, to do that on a national stage like that, it really got everyone's attention. It was just a beatdown of NC State. Quick look at the stats. Tennessee was dominant in all the categories. Passing yards, Tennessee was leading 211 to 104. Rushing 249 to 39, and that's really one of the key stats there. NC State could not run the ball, and this is what I was kind of saying in my last video. Well, I was saying Tennessee would probably go up big early. That really didn't happen to that extent, but NC State could not run the ball. They were forced to try to throw, and once we kind of figured out what they were trying to do with Concepcion, they really, NC State didn't really have another answer. And so Grayson McCall didn't look great. Our defense made him look pedestrian at best. I mean, the defensive line for this team is scary, very scary. First downs, we had 22 to their 10. Total yards was 460 to 143. And that's a huge difference, right? I don't know if you remember. I think it was 10-3, and they were driving. I think Nico he threw his first interception into traffic. I will say this: when I was watching it on replay, it looked almost to me like Bru McCoy cut his route a little early from where Nico was trying to throw it. So I don't know if that was so much. It definitely, he shouldn't throw it in that tight of coverage, although he has one of the best arms I've ever seen. Still probably shouldn't throw it in that much coverage. But I do think there was a bit of miscommunication between he and Bru. And so I think that might have had more to do with it than it just being an errant throw. After that interception, they're driving. We get the pick 6 due to Joshua Josephs being in the throwing lane. Grace McCall throws it up high. And then Will Brooks, the walk-on, playing like a stud, ran it all the way back for the pick 6. And from there, we just rooted them. It was a big time blowout. Score ended up being 51-10. And like I said, Nico, I thought he played really, I thought he played a good game. don't really have to do too much when you're running the ball for 249 yards. He threw his second interception. Wasn't really his fault though. Defensive lineman got through. I think it was in between Spraggins and Campbell. Hit him as he was throwing, and they ended up getting actually a pick six, and that was where they got their main points from that game. So just a big time win. Dylan Sampson had another 100+ yard game. He had 20 attempts for 132 yards. Deshaun Bishop ran hard, 10 for 42. And it was just a big time win on a big time stage. Again, NC State, I don't think they're as good as what a lot of people thought they were going to be. But just a solid win, and really kind of put the country on notice that this Tennessee team is not just offense, that the defense is playing lights out. So let's fast forward now to last Saturday, and I mean this no disrespect. That Kent State team is maybe the worst team I have seen play in Neyland. It's one of the worst teams I've ever seen play football, but in Neyland specifically, I can't think of a game where the talent disparity was that high. And I don't know even if they were that well coached of a team either. It was just again, I'm not trying to disrespect. I know they're rebuilding, but it was Tennessee did whatever they wanted to do, and they couldn't even snap the ball. Kent State couldn't even snap the ball. They had 3 or 4 snaps that just went flying over the quarterback's head, and they would lose 20 yards. The first time it was a safety, and it was bad. It was really bad. Kent State, they were out of sorts, like I said, from the very beginning. And I didn't get to make a video, but my score prediction for the game was 62-6. I thought they were going to get a couple field goals. I think they only attempted 1 field goal, and it was like a 50-something yarder, and it missed. Or I think it was a little short. But apparently even that prediction was a little too generous. Tennessee scored 65 points in the first half. In total, they won 71-0. And so to win 71-0, they only kicked 2 field goals in the second half. That is how badly they pulled on the reins of this offense, because they just were doing whatever they wanted to do. Scored 37 points in the first quarter. Again, so 37 points in the first quarter is a Tennessee record. 65 points and a half is a Tennessee record, and I think it might be an SEC record as well. 71 points in Neyland is a record for the modern day era. They had 740 total yards, which is a UT record. Again, Nico's numbers. Let's see. Let's just look at passing here. So in total, we had 284 passing yards, 456 rushing yards. It's bad. They had 58 passing yards and 54 rushing yards. So the total yards again was 740 for Tennessee, 112 for Kent State. And I don't know. They schedule these games, years in advance, so far ahead, and so it's hard to know. And Kent State a couple of years ago wasn't a bad team, and so it's hard to know that a team is going to be this bad. But that was the worst game. Again, I'm not trying to dog on them, but that was the worst team I've ever seen. I've ever seen in Neyland anyway. They pulled Nico. I think there was like 7 minutes left in the second quarter, and so Nico's numbers. That's the thing. I think a lot of people are looking at Nico's numbers and like, why aren't they? Why is he not throwing 200, 300 yards? He threw 300 yards in the first game against UTC in the first half, and then was pulled. He had the NC State game. Where he was okay. It was his first. It wasn't really a road game. It was a neutral site environment, but he played decent. Threw a couple picks, but one of them really wasn't his fault. And the other one I do think was a little bit more of a miscommunication than what I think people realize. And I think they even mentioned that on the broadcast. And so in the Kent State game, Nico was 10 of 16 for 173 yards. I think he threw a touchdown. No sacks or anything like that. Gaston Moore relieved him. Like I said, I think 7 minutes left in the second quarter. He went four for 94 yards and 2 passing touchdowns. Jake Merklinger, it's really hard to grade Merklinger too hard. He didn't look great, but at the same time, Tennessee was running the most vanilla, let's run the clock out. So what happened was Tennessee was up 30-0, and then they wanted to get work in on doing the onside kick. It wasn't the best optics, and I think a lot of people around the country thought that Tennessee was just trying to bully around Kent State. Again, we paid them, I think, $1.35 million to show up, and so I don't care when people run up to score, especially when it's something like that where you're getting paid $1.35 million to show up. And so it wasn't the best optics. They were just trying to work on the onside kick. Kent State literally was lined up where they kicked the onside kick. They were literally lined up like 20 yards off the ball. And so Tennessee did the onside kick, probably shouldn't have recovered it, but I think it went through the dude's hands. Tennessee recovered it. And so, it's 65-0 at the half. I think Tennessee offered to do a continuous clock. I think they offered them to do 10-minute quarters. To Kent State's credit, they didn't want to do that, but Tennessee basically did it themselves then, and so they were running the clock out basically the entire second half. This game, Tennessee absolutely could have scored 100 points if they wanted to score 100 points. And so it was just a beatdown. I don't know how much you learned from that game, other than Tennessee was mature and showed up to play football, right? And that's what you want when you have a team you think is good. They don't sleepwalk through a game, and that they definitely weren't doing that. Even if they had been sleepwalking with this game, it still would have been a bad time for Kent State. I think Sham Umarov got banged up. I have not heard what he would. It looked like a lower body injury. I don't know if that's been released yet or not. I know they're supposed to do like an injury report now on Wednesday, so I'm kind of curious to see what that was. Other than that, though, I don't think anybody got banged up. They held out a lot of people. Lance Hurd, Cam Seldon, and we're going to talk about that one here in a second. I think he had a concussion. That's why he got held out of the NC State game. Before we get into the running game, let's take a quick look, or let's talk about the defense for a little bit. James Pierce still doesn't have a sack, but when I tell you, every single time he has been on the field, he is affecting. He's affecting the play. They are double teaming, chipping, blatantly tackling him to prevent him from getting a sack, prevent him from getting to the quarterback. And the rest of the defensive line is eating because of it, right? The rest of the defensive line, they are all talented in their own right, but it definitely helps when you have somebody like James Pierce, probably the best pass rusher in the nation, on the edge that's getting everybody's attention. And you're getting some one-on-one blocks, right? And so the rest of the defensive line playing up to the standard and is taking care of business. And so he's going to get his eventually. I think this Oklahoma game, I really do think he'll probably show up because I think Oklahoma's going to have to do, and we'll talk about this a little bit, but I think they're going to have to throw the ball around a lot to keep up with Tennessee. Let's talk about Dylan Sampson now. Let's talk about the run game. First thing I want to do is talk about how good Dylan Sampson's been this year. I think he's only caught 1 or 2 passes out of the backfield. He is a weapon, catching balls out of the backfield. I would love to see them do that in the Oklahoma game. They have done so many different formations and thrown so many things out there on tape. They did 12 personnel where you have 2 tight ends out there. They did 4 wide. Where you have 4 wide receivers on the field this past game. You got to see Mike Matthews catch a touchdown pass. That was nice to see. He looks like he's going to be a stud. But Dylan Sampson, just I guess a quick tangent on me wanting to see him catch the ball a little bit more. It's hard to gear a bunch of plays for him in the passing game when you have 8 wide receivers that are needing to catch some passes as well. But Dylan Sampson has been running lights out. I think he's tied for the lead in the country for touchdowns. I think he had 4 this last game. Let's see here. He was 13 carries for 101 yards, so another 100-yard game. I think that might be his fourth in a row. He's definitely eclipsed 100 each game this year with 4 rushing touchdowns, and he has been absolutely lights out. And honestly, it would not surprise me as much hype as Nico gets, and when the Heisman race, when they're talking about that, it's typically all quarterbacks. It would not surprise me if you start to see Dylan Sampson, if he can keep this pace up. I'd be surprised if he can. We're going to face a lot more competition here coming up, but he has been lights out. He's been running. He's been patient, finding the hole, running off blocks really well, and just been a nightmare for defenses. And so that's been really awesome. And then I wanted to talk about the Cam Seldon injury. Like I said, I think he had a concussion. They held him out of the NC State game. He probably could have went this game, but they held him out. And Deshaun Bishop, who played, I think he played at Carnes here in Knoxville, really has taken advantage of Cam Seldon being out. And if I'm Cam Seldon, I am begging Darrell Sims to put me out on that field to run the ball and to show that he deserves the number 2 spot, because I don't know if he can get that number 2 spot back from Deshaun Bishop right now. Deshaun Bishop has been running lights out. He had 7 carries for 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. He broke a 53-yarder and a 47-yarder in that Kent State game. Again, it is Kent State, but he looked amazing. His speed, he has great vision. He did a couple different times where he was full sprint and then made like just a little shifty cut and made people miss in that third level. And not every back can do that. And he has really been putting on some highlights on these last couple games. And I think he has pushed his way up to that number 2 spot. And it would not surprise me if they keep Cam Seldon as the number 3 back, at least for this Oklahoma game, to see how Deshaun Bishop does. He's ran that well. So that's been awesome to see. Like I was saying, I wouldn't worry about Nico. He's only played 8 quarters this year. I know his total yards and total touchdowns aren't the best, but he didn't play the second half in UTC. Barely. Yeah, he played 19 minutes of game time in the Kent State game. So, I'm sorry, he played what, 22 minutes of game time in the Kent State game. So, he's going to be good. This is his first road game, and it's going to be a big one. It's going to be a really big game. So let's jump ahead and get on with the preview for this weekend, because Tennessee is going to Norman, Oklahoma to play the Sooners, and I am excited. When we played that home-and-home series with them, I think it was 2014, 2015, which I think they won both of those. That 2015 game was amazing to watch. I think that was the Baker Mayfield year where it was like double overtime. Just an amazing environment for that game. And Tennessee making their way back to Norman. And this time, Josh Heupel is the head coach. And so for anyone that doesn't know, if you're a fan of college football, I feel like you know it at this point. If you didn't before this week, you do now, because every outlet's covering it. Josh Heupel was the quarterback for the Sooners when they won the national championship in 2000. He was the runner-up for Heisman that year. I think he lost to Chris Winkie. I did a video on Josh Heupel a few months ago. You should check it out. It gives all his information, him as a player, as a coach, and kind of his path to Tennessee. He very famously was fired from his alma mater, so he was hired as he was offensive coordinator, co-offensive coordinator, working for Stoops, and ended up getting fired. They had a bit of a down year, not necessarily super down. I think they averaged 30-something points a game with him as the offensive coordinator in 2014. But he underperformed a bit, but a lot of it was because he wasn't getting to run the offense that he was wanting to run, and Oklahoma was also giving up a lot of points. But the defensive coordinator was Stoops' brother, and so Heupel was kind of used as a scapegoat, and so ultimately he was let go. And so there's been a bit of a rift there between him and Oklahoma, a school that he played for, that he coached for. So I know that had to it's impossible to not take it personal when you are invested that much into a program. And so, it's definitely been the highlight of this week. All the stories being written about it, and I think for both parties though, it ended up being the right move, mainly because Oklahoma got Lincoln Riley for a few years and they put up amazing offenses. Heupel was set on a different path, worked his way through as a coordinator. I remember when we played Missouri and he was their offensive coordinator. And I remember watching them play us and going to the kitchen, and I realized they had ran like 3 or 4 plays by the time I went to the kitchen to get me something to drink. So that was the first time I got a taste of his offense. He replaced Scott Frost at UCF and was amazing there, and he's been absolutely lights out for Tennessee. We have been ahead of schedule since he got here. We were a program in shambles, and Danny White came in, was hired, and he brought Heupel with him, and it has been quite a fun time, especially as a Tennessee fan, to watch this rebuild, because he has got this football team humming at this point. Offense looks amazing. Defense, Tim Banks has done a great job of that defense, and so he is making the trip to Oklahoma. I think he, on his Monday press conference, said this is going to be the first time he ever has been on the opposite team sideline. So it is a road game. It is a night game. It is prime time on ABC. And so, this is a big time game, right? This is Nico's first true road start. Tennessee, I think they opened up as 7.5 point favorites. I think you can find anywhere from like 6.5 to 7.5 point favorites. Oklahoma's defense, they are very stout. This is a Brent Venables defense. Expect him to show multiple looks. Expect him to bring lots of pressure, try to rattle Nico, force some mistakes, because I think that's going to be one of the only ways that they're going to have a chance to beat Tennessee. They have to play aggressive, and I fully expect them to, because when Heupel first got here, everybody kind of played man up, tried to pressure, and Heupel it was big play after big play after big play. And I think you saw it a little bit in 22, but really a lot of it last year, where people were just, dropping 7, dropping 8, making Tennessee run, and then dink and dunk down the field with passes. You don't want to give a big play. And that worked to a certain extent against Joe Milton. Milton did not utilize the middle of the field very well. Not to knock on Milton. He's playing in the NFL right now. So, he was, as a Vol fan, I appreciate each and every player that comes through this program, but, he did not utilize the middle of the field like Nico does. And also this is a year advance with offensive line. It's Dylan Sampson's your running back. The wide receiver core, I think, is better. It's deeper. And teams have been trying to drop 8, drop 7, and only throw a light box down. And Tennessee has been running all over them. And so what I mean by a light box, between the tackles, they've typically been throwing down about 6 or 7 about 5 or 6 defenders. That's typically a light box. 7 to 8, you're starting to get into a heavy box. A lot of teams have been just doing 5 or 6 defenders, and when you do that, you're asking to get ran all over. And then you couple that with some screen passes, and then you can throw in a deep shot here or there. And Tennessee has had an answer for that. So I think Oklahoma, to win this game, has to play aggressive. This is a redshirt freshman quarterback, his first road start. And I expect Venables to bring a lot of pressure. Because as I was saying, their defense is very stout. Offensively, they have looked fairly pedestrian, especially in their first 2 games. They looked a little bit better with Tulane. Jackson Darnold's their quarterback. He does have a little bit of the turnover bug in him. Typically throws a pick, but he really utilizes legs a little bit more in that Tulane game. And he's their leading rusher, which is a little odd. I think he has 100 and something yards rushing. And so they've not ran the ball very well for Oklahoma. But going back to Jackson Arnold, he's a young quarterback, same class as Nico. Ton of talent. He has a ton of talent, great arm, live arm, can run the ball. But he has not had a lot of help. Their offensive line, they brought in 5 new offensive linemen. I think 2 of them are still hurt. I don't think they're going to be back for this game. He's had one of his big receivers that's been out all year. I think he will be back. It could be a very long day for them, right? As I said, that I think they have 2 offensive linemen hurt. And I think for Oklahoma, they really need this game to be a low-scoring fist fight going into the fourth quarter to have a chance. And they certainly can do it. Venables, like I was saying, he's a great defensive mind. He was on all those championship teams for Clemson. But I do predict that while Oklahoma is a better team than NC State, I think this game, I'm predicting this game to go how I thought the NC State game would go. Honestly, it's going to be like that for a lot of this year. Tennessee's defensive line is so stout, you cannot run on them. And so you have to throw the ball a lot. And Tennessee likes to start off fast. They like to go up quick, and then you're playing keep up. And when you have a defensive line like this, and you have James Pierce, Joshua Josephs coming off the edge, a young quarterback, a porous offensive line, I think it's going to be a really long day for Jackson Darnold. I think even if Nico has a bad game, Tennessee can rely on the run game. And I think even like I said, Nico has a bad game, fine. Tennessee's run game is so dominant. And then Tennessee's defensive line and defense in general so far has been so dominant. I just don't know if Oklahoma can keep up. And so, I think if Oklahoma can pressure Nico, force a couple turnovers, make us try to run the ball, that's really the main thing that people are going to be watching for, or you should be watching for. How does Oklahoma's defensive line, probably their strength, they have a really good linebacker as well. How do they hold up against our veteran offensive line? Because if they can get some push, and if they can hold us running the ball, maybe it can be a long day. That's going to be the way they win this game. Forcing turnovers, stuffing the run, bringing pressure on Nico. That's going to be a recipe for them to win. This is still Oklahoma. They have a ton of talented players on that team. This is a blue blood in terms of college football, right? This is a top 10 program of all time, Oklahoma and Tennessee. This is a big-time matchup. And this is Oklahoma's first SEC game. They have had to hear for years how the SEC is the best conference, because we are, and that's why they're in it now. But they want to win. They want this to be a win. With that being said, though, and I mean absolutely no disrespect to their team or their fans, I do think Tennessee is going to dominate this game. I think Tennessee is going to dominate. Heupel wants this one bad. This is very personal for him. Hopefully he doesn't press. And I hope that, I don't think he will. I don't think the team will press. I think they're going to take it just like any other game. But I know deep down Heupel really does want this one. And if he can hang 100 on them, he will. I see Tennessee going up early. I think they lead, go up by 10 to 20 points. Oklahoma panics, begins to try and air it out with Darnold, and Tennessee's defense takes advantage, right? My prediction for this game is Tennessee 44, Oklahoma 17. Now, that's much bigger than the spread. I know with NC State, I picked a pretty similar spread, and I felt at the time like I was picking Tennessee to score way too many points and NC State not to score enough. But I've seen a lot of different national media members pick it to be close. I've seen some people think that it's going to be a blowout and Tennessee's going to win by a lot. You don't see a lot of people picking Oklahoma to win by a lot. I haven't seen one person actually. And so for me personally, it's as crazy as it seems. Tennessee has a very good chance of winning this game because of their defense, because of their strong run game, Yes, Nico could have a bad game. Nico threw 2 picks in NC State, and Tennessee won 51-10. And so, again, that's NC State. This is Oklahoma. I do think Oklahoma's a better team. I don't think Oklahoma's a great team. I think I think Oklahoma's defense is solid. Their offense struggles, and it's not necessarily Darnold's fault. A lot of it has to go on that offensive line. If you don't have a good line of scrimmage, you're not going to play well in this league. And I think Tennessee goes up early. Oklahoma is playing keep up, and they just can't do it because they're going to try and throw the ball a lot, and James Pierce is going to eat them up. And so that is my prediction. So I will say, if I'm wrong, my video next week is going to be me saying why I'm wrong and that I was, and kind of reviewing that. I have no problem admitting when I'm wrong. That's how I feel it's going to go. But I will say, if I'm Oklahoma, I've seen one team, at least in that I can think of, that went down early but didn't press. Tennessee is so good at applying that pressure because they want to score, and then all of a sudden the game plan goes out the window and you have to try and play keep up. The one time, I'm sure it's happened other times, but the big one that I can think of was the Tennessee-Alabama game in 2022. If you remember, Tennessee went up big early. Unfortunately for Tennessee, Alabama has probably the greatest college football coach of all time on their sideline. They didn't press. They kept to their game plan, put up points when they could. He was kicking field goals, and they were down by 20. And Alabama, sure enough, climbed back into it and ended up being, it was a back-and-forth game. Alabama eventually lost, but that game could have been a blowout. Had Saban started pressing, could have been a blowout. And I think the coaches should really point to that, like, hey, we need to try and stick to our game plan, whatever we do come up with. Because Tennessee is great at just applying so much pressure. All of a sudden, hair's on fire, everybody running around, and you're just trying to play keep up. Stick to your plan, Oklahoma, and, bring pressure. Try to sack Nico. Try to force turnovers. Do your very best to stop the run game. And you might have a bit of a shot if it's a low-scoring game. And so I don't think it will be, though. I do think Tennessee puts up a lot. So how can you watch this game? It's going to be this Saturday. That is October 21st. It's at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's going to be on ABC. I believe it's Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler. Holly Rowe on the sideline. It's going to be a primetime game. Everybody in the country is going to be watching this game. This is a big one. And so that's all I have for this one. It was a bit longer than I meant for it to be, but I haven't made one. I haven't made a video in a couple weeks, and so I was itching to get to talk about all this stuff. This year's been so much fun. I have enjoyed, as a fan, you have to try and enjoy every single win that you can. I have absolutely done that. Hope that we get a big win this Saturday. Thank you so much to each and every one of you that have been watching this, that have been supporting the channel. Oklahoma fans, if any Oklahoma fan gets to watch this video, how do you see the game going? Am I that completely wrong that I think Tennessee's going to just smack around Oklahoma? If I am, drop a comment. Let me know, what is your score prediction? Hit the like button if you don't mind. Helps me out a lot. Hit the subscribe button. Smash it. Help me continue to grow this channel. Tell somebody about this channel, right? Oklahoma fans, tell somebody, hey, if you want to hear more about Tennessee football, you should look up Guy Talk Sports. I got all kinds of videos. Tell them about it. Tell somebody, really helps me out. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Go Vols. We'll see you next time.